Okay, hearing that everyone's here, I'd like to call the meeting of the April 7th, 2021 Maple Run Unified School District Board of Directors meeting to order. It is 6:02 p.m. First item on the agenda is the agenda review. Anyone have any items that need to be added, subtracted to the agenda?
Okay. The review will be approved as presented.
Thanks, Al. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. So please join me for a Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To
to
the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hard to find the flag in here, but yoki. Next item on the agenda is visitors. Do we have visitors? Looks like we have visitors. Any visitors that would like to speak? If you're a visitor and would like to speak, can you put your name in the chat, please? I'm not seeing any names in the chat, so is anyone else?
Ryer just added his name.
No, that Ryer Erickson put his name in.
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. All right, Ryer, you're on.
Thank you. I just want to, in light of all of the anti-Asian sentiment that's kind of happening in the country, I would really like to encourage the school board to look into anti-racism and anti-bias training, and not just maybe for the school board, but for the district in general. I think it's a super important and something that I think, as I've learned in the past couple months, vital to the current environment we live in. And I just think from personal experience, there is a lot of work to do. And I don't think there's any reason why it shouldn't be done. It's something that lots of school districts are doing across the state and country, and it's something that's really important as we try to raise future leaders and future people who are going to be compassionate and caring. And so yeah, I just really want to speak to that I think that's something that can go a long way in terms of for our society. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the visitor section want to speak? Okay, so we're going to move on to yeah, I got the agenda on one laptop, and just give me a little second here. Okay, now next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. So we have items attachment A, B, and C on the consent agenda, minutes, staff changes, and a media packet. Anyone have anything they want to pull out of the consent agenda to discuss separately? Hearing none, we can accept the consent agenda as listed. Moving on to old business, the COVID update. Dr. Dirth, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Good evening, everybody. I think we're all hoping for the day that we don't have COVID updates on the agenda, but we're not quite there yet. And some might say that we're actually in a place where it's actually getting a bit worse up here. So I do want to talk about it a little bit. Obviously, we have our vaccinations in place, and that's very exciting. I heard a stat the other day that statewide, 75 to 80% of the educators have been already vaccinated, which is great. Collins Pearly has been top notch, as always, with vaccinations. They so far have given over 10,000 shots, and there are 9 more clinics that are scheduled in Collins Pearly in the near future. So we're certainly moving forward in that area, and that's wonderful. The area that now appears to be a larger problem is our younger people. And especially, we have some variants in the area. And I actually heard another stat this afternoon that said that the biggest population of people who become positive are between the ages 16 and 29. So we're watching that, and we're seeing it in our schools. We have continued to be relatively lucky that we haven't had to close schools. And I know I probably sound like a broken record, but we've been very close, and we continue to be close, either because of staffing issues, quarantining issues. But the principals and the faculty have been absolutely amazing. All hands on deck. Joan, how many people did you say you had out yesterday?
We had 40 people that were not where they needed to be, and 26 we couldn't have subs for.
So people just come in the morning and they go where they need to go to staff our schools. And that's wonderful. But again, the numbers are up. And I actually have a chart that I would like to show you that our nurses gave the statistics to Brenda, and she made a chart for us. So Brenda, could you share that screen so people can see it? This is what we're seeing right now in Maple Run. The colored are our schools and the number of staff members who tested positive. And the horizontal is chronological from September of last year. It says up to May. Of course, we're not in May yet, but up to this time period. So you can see where the peak is. And with the possible exception of Fairfield, we're right in the midst of the higher cases in the district.
Evan, of the BSA students, family members, and staff, how many of that is family members and not students or staff?
I don't know if we've drilled down enough to that stat, but we've got it right in front of us, Susan. I can tell you most of the students and staff, but I don't know how many are the family members right now. We can find out. It would just be another data point that we don't have right now, but the nurses have. This also,
For me, that would be helpful.
okay. It also includes, it says up at the top, not all of these kids or staff members, well, mainly students, were in school at the time. So we do have some who are out. They knew there might be an issue. They got tested, and so they never was in school at the time. Right now, for the benefit of what we're just trying to show, which are cases, it's in there.
So, Kevin, those are actually positive cases, not just people that are out.
Correct. Oh, we don't have room for the people who are out.
Right. Well, because though, just to illustrate a point, if you have a family of 4 and mom and dad are positive and the kids get tested and they're negative, they get tested again in 7 days and they're negative, they have to quarantine for 14 extra days beyond the end of the quarantine of the parents because of how it plays out. So those people would, students, those 2 would be out of school. So it impacts in a different way.
It certainly impacts in a different way, and that would be another data point.
Yeah.
But certainly, if we start getting into quarantine and people having to stay home, you can just hear it. And that's just 1 day. So, and it's only staff members.
Yes.
So,
Nilda, they have to be out for 28 days?
Well, it's about 21 days because they have to play out the quarantine. Yeah, they can test out at day 7 of that 14-day quarantine period. So if they're asymptomatic and they're doing the extra 14 days, at day 7, they can have a 3rd test. And if that test is negative, then they can go back in public. So it's about 21 days if they're negative through the whole process. If they're positive, it's 28 days. Yeah.
so the chart's not here to panic anybody. They are what they are. And as I said, schools are open, kids are learning, they're going in and out as necessary. But to people who think that this is over, it's not. And we still have to maintain vigilance as we're moving along through this. Joanne? And I can't see everybody on my thing now, so if I'm missing somebody, just speak up.
Are you, with all the people that are out, are you able, are the schools able to keep up with the demand for like intervention and special education services? Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's as best we can. I mean, it's
I
not,
know, I'm not judging, I'm asking.
not able to continue, keep totally up on this. And we've said that actually for a while. We're doing the absolute best we can with what we've got and with what the staff are doing, but there's no way in heck, even in the perfect world of people aren't really sick, but they're in a hybrid system or whatever, there's no way in heck that they're really getting what they need, Joanna.
Yeah, I
We
know.
understand that.
So I have another question. So can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So my question is this, and I have to ask it even though I just heard all of this. I have to ask it because I've had a bunch of parents and even a couple of teachers ask me, if we've followed CDC guidelines all along, how come we're not following them now in terms of allowing students to return at 3 feet distance from each other?
So if that's something that's further on in my presentation, I'll talk about that.
Okay, thanks.
Kevin, I had a question. It's Nina. And you might be covering this, and if you are, I'll just let me know. So with obviously, I mean, we're seeing numbers like this and we're hearing about them, but with the, the governor talking yesterday and laying out the plan by July 4th, I mean, does that make your job in the admin, the school system, who's working in the school system, MRUSD, that much harder just to try to keep people calm and saying that this is not ended yet and still enforcing what we need to do to bring those numbers down?
I don't, much of what you guys are asking are further on in my presentation.
Okay, then oh, that's fine, Kevin. I can wait.
I will hit the one you just mentioned.
Okay.
That is I think we're doing an excellent job within the school community, with faculty and staff and people are feeling safe. And the thing where we're having the issue, which I want to talk about more on, is relative to our parents and how they're feeling. And that's going to come up in a second.
Okay.
Anything else on this chart? Just, I thought it was a good point for you to at least to see where we are with that. It's probably no surprise because you've heard that our community numbers are up. Thanks, Brenda. So we're in a bit of a conundrum now, but it's no different than the conundrum we've had all year long relative to what students need, what some parents want to see, and what the science is telling us. And we've had some long discussions now about if and when we start bringing more students into school. And while I sound like a broken record, we still are sticking to those 3 areas that I have talked about over and over again, relative to what will tell us whether we can bring kids in or whether we have to keep them out. And that's staffing, whether we're able to staff. It's also around the community spread and what the Department of Health says. And help me out, guys, because I just forgot my 3rd one. Which one did I miss?
The social distancing. Kevin, the social distancing.
The social distancing, yes. And whether we're able to keep our own protocols in place in our buildings and be successful at that. So that's what we look at all points. So we presently have 7 through 12 that are hybrid, 2 days a week. And we've been looking at how can we, as vaccinations keep coming up, how can we start bringing some other people in? And as Susan mentioned, the CDC, and I emphasize the CDC, has talked about a 3-foot rule, going from the 6-foot rule. That is not state guidelines. And we are always told to follow state guidelines, but in spite of that, we'll talk a bit more about that. We have pretty much made this decision, unless the guidelines change significantly, even from what the CDC says, we just are not able to bring in the high school level. Because it was mentioned that they went from 6 to 3 feet. That's true. But BFA has small rooms. We've actually, Brett has talked to me about the fact that people are bringing tape measures in, the administrators, and measuring rooms to see if it's possible at 3 feet on every direction, with the teacher in front at least 6 feet away, are we able to bring more kids in? And we just can't at the high school level. And when we add to that the issue with the present increase in just those areas, 16 through 29, those 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, we just aren't able to do that right now. And I know there's some pressure and some feelings that we should be able to do that. We can't. Not following the science, not following our criteria at the high school level. And I may be wrong, because we still have a couple months and things might change, but I don't predict that unless the guidelines change, that for the remainder of the year, we're going to be able to bring high school in more than the hybrid. And it's not from not wanting to, because we really want to get our kids in, but we have to be careful. We've been successful at this point because we've been careful. Now, having said that, we do believe at the 7th and 8th grade level, we can start looking at this. We believe we have the room. We believe we can do something. As you know, up to 6th grade, they're already in 4 days a week. So we can't guarantee this yet, because that guidance, which is supposed to come out by Friday, though I will not bet a week's salary on that, but they're saying it's supposed to come out by Friday, may be different. But as it stands now, if it sticks with the 3-foot rule, we think we can do it with 7th and 8th grade, but we still want to be cautious because of what we're seeing. So what we're thinking about, and this is now brainstorming and it's not a sure thing, and I have not put anything out to the community because we still have things we have to check out, have to watch the numbers, etc. What we're thinking about is moving the state testing, which we're being forced to do this year, to right after we get back from vacation. And doing that as it is presently now with the hybrid. And get the state testing out of the way with the idea that hopefully in early to mid-May, if things continue to get better, if the guidelines don't get any worse, that we could bring the 7th and 8th grade in for the remainder of the year. And we'll try that. But again, I have to emphasize, we're just monitoring this right now. And
Kevin?
for the best. Alicia?
Yeah, sorry, I have a couple of questions. I know that in the state, Franklin County is one of the
You froze.
We lost you, Alicia.
While Alicia's coming back, Susan, did I answer your question now?
You did, but I'm gonna ask a couple other questions. So my other questions are in regards to the high school. Is there a possibility, and I don't know if this is St. Mary's Hall being rented out? Is there a possibility that we could move classrooms around so that there's a possibility that maybe we could get some of the bigger classrooms into different places that would, or bigger classes, I should say, different places that would allow students to come back, 4 days a week or full time, like the Armory, St. Mary's Parish Center. I want to toss out some really crazy things. City Hall, Collins Pearly, the Conference Center at Northwestern Medical Center. I don't think that would happen, but I'm trying to think outside the box because these are the questions that people are asking me, and I think it's important that we have the answers.
So Brett might have some, or Bill might have some further. I will start that answering that question, and I'll let them go if they want. First off, I know that Brett has already been looking into that seriously, and I know other high schools have been doing the same thing. There are several issues. First off, St. Mary's is off the table. We won't be using a church for that. But we have looked at other places. The issue comes down mainly to logistics. If you're talking for the remainder of 6 weeks and attempting to move classrooms, desks, and everything else, and finding the places, we've just found that way too tough. And it still doesn't get over the issue of numbers, because we'll still have that. Brett, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything you might want to add?
Yeah, sure. I've called the parents personally that have reached out to me with the same concerns you just mentioned, Susan. And we've been looking at this for months, and Tim Smith has put a great deal of time helping coordinate and connect us with various buildings. So we looked at, I think, literally all the areas near us. And as Kevin just said, the churches are problematic public education. We meet with a variety of students, and some students have told us they would not go to class there because of their comfort level or discomfort level.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Right. And so, and then there's also small things like the students said, Mr. Blanchard, on a nice day, not all kids might make it to class. That's not why we chose not to, just that they were good about it. We have huge issues with cleaning that right now it's difficult enough to clean the 2 buildings and the connector, let alone cleaning the various areas we may use. We are using the Armory right now, or more precisely, NCTC uses the Armory right now on occasion with, I believe, the nursing program, but Leanne Elisa can correct me if that's inaccurate. We did look across the way at the Passport immigration office, and they had a flood issue that I'm not sure if they had completely cleaned. Long story short, we spent a great deal of time on that. The complex we couldn't use because the tennis court area is being used for vaccinations. So while that might be limited in May, there's no guarantee of that. So we've already split our gym in half for a lot of areas, including for food service. We use our PAC, the Performing Arts Center, every period. We have history class in there already. We have a variety of classes. Heather and Sarah took a look at every single classroom, and we did a per foot usage. We took a look at 3 feet. And if you really want to know what the operating kind of principles that we use, because we believe, you know, using objectives, our main objectives happen to be that we believe a continuity of learning is the most important thing for our kids. It's been the most disruptive year in educational history, modern history. We also believe that we need to maximize our chances for holding senior events or events. And if you look at our area schools or the last 2 weeks of the athletic season, I'm proud that we won the boys hockey championship and the girls basketball championship.
You had to get that in.
So, well, yeah. So there's, and by the way, they earned it. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. But I feel sorry for some schools, some girls that were put back on the bus 15 minutes before playing time. I feel sorry for other schools that haven't lost a game in 2 years and never won a championship. And I most would feel sorry for our seniors to say, oh, with 3 feet apart, we're still doing 6 foot contact tracing. That doubles our numbers. We're not going to do senior year events, but we'll hand you your diploma. So that's a bit unfair, maybe my quick last summary, but it basically holds true. So yes to all those think outside the box, and we could make it work.
Thank you. Any other questions for Kevin or anything more in your report, Kevin?
Looks like Alicia's back.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I shut my video off. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. So I didn't hear your answer, but is vaccination rate playing into any of your decision making for reopening things?
It is for graduation, but that's a separate topic, so I should answer more directly. For reopening, it didn't play a big role because we do not have certainty of when 16-year-olds would be vaccinated. We still have 14 and 15-year-olds occupy about 40% of our clientele, if you will, our student body. So I guess really no.
I guess what I really meant was for if we were looking at community rates as indications for family members becoming vaccinated, if that might be an indicator eventually. I didn't know if that was being thought about.
Yeah, it's a little surprising to me. The numbers in the community seem to be an all-time high. At least I believe they are. That's not a fact. It's what I think they are. And we should have at this point, the vast majority of adults, at least on to the second shot, but it is what it is. And we do contact tracing minimally 5 days a week. We did, when I say we, it's like I'm doing it. I do it maybe once a week. Val does it most of the time. And then, so does Jody. And then administration splits the rest of it. So, you know, there's hours every single day. If we had to double that, would not only be horrendous, I think it would likely lead to momentary closure.
Grant?
Yeah. So you can obviously get statistics about, you know, vaccination rates or prevalence of COVID in the community. And we've established that you can't query teachers directly to figure out if individuals have been vaccinated. Will there be controls in place for students? Because I think there is an exception for enforcing immunization records at the student level. So when those, you know, when those you know, people in those age groups become eligible, will you guys have procedures in place?
All records are still confidential. And if I don't answer the question correctly, just correct me, Grant. So that's on a need to know. The nurses would likely have that information. when we do contact tracing, we would know perhaps when we ask teachers, do you need to quarantine? Should they have gone through the full vaccination period? They won't need to. But I think I may be misunderstood or not answering correctly.
I'm thinking that when students become eligible to be vaccinated, is that something
we
that
won't-
the school will be able to keep track of?
No.
Not for students either.
I'll let
What
Bill
about
answer.
what about the lower grade levels?
Grant, can I just, I would refer you to Dr. Levine's noontime conference on VPR. He answered this directly, that the medical, it would have to come from the Department of Health.
Yeah,
Willing to require a type of vaccine, and he does not see that being a fast process.
I see.
I heard it today at noon. I happened to be in the car between buildings.
Yeah.
And I would say that's a Department of Health question, not one for us. We follow what we're told from the Department of Health for childhood vaccinations.
All right. So I guess the rambling
And they're
kind
not
of
getting-
way. Go ahead, John.
I'm just saying they're not getting vaccinated at their pediatrician's office. So that's why Bill is saying it becomes a Department of Health issue. So the record is not within their pediatrician's offices, and that's where the immunization records come from currently. So it would be a whole new system that would need to be created and then communicated to the schools.
Yeah, I guess what I'm seeing is probably getting into, more of a gray area than we've ever been. Up until now, it's been easy because you just know that nobody's been vaccinated, right? Until a few months ago, really. And so all the policy was based on essentially everybody being susceptible and, the rates out in the community and, whatever controls you had available to you. I see us moving into kind of a situation where it appears that the state guidance is going to be out of sync with the actual COVID cases. And so, you're kind of, you're going to see some discrepancies between policy and, science and data, combined with some uncertainty around, what the real risk is in the schools. I think it's going to be much more difficult to, set policy and procedure in the next few months than it ever has been, especially with increasing pressure to open. And I don't know if that's just an unfortunate situation or if there's a way to get out in front of it.
So I kind of already know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyhow. If we knew students were vaccinated, would that allow a certain portion of them to come back at 4 days a week or 5 days a week versus students that hadn't been vaccinated? So I'm going to say, obviously we can't ask them any of that information, but if that was volunteered, would that be a possibility?
I don't believe so, Susan.
I had to ask it.
You guys are bringing up some good questions and they're out in the community, and I'm quite well sure that you're being asked those questions. All we can say is we are continuing to do our best to keep the kids and the staff safe. And yes, the staff are pretty much vaccinated, but there are other issues that we are careful about. And I want to reiterate something. I heard something on the news today, a commentator getting very, very upset with teachers because it felt that teachers in the New York City schools and some other schools were threatening to boycott and to strike if they were made to go in full time and have the kids come in full time. This is not what we're talking about up here. Our teachers are in and want to be in, and all of our staff are. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the science. And yes, vaccination is a part of that, but we're still trying to follow the details and the stats the way we're supposed to. And while people are getting antsy, and that's legitimate, and I'm one of them, we still have to follow that, because if we don't, we're going to have schools closing, and then we're going to have summer issues. And we need to make sure we're doing it the best we can. I see Brett and I see Joanna. Brett?
Yeah, I just want to get on the record that not a single faculty member has spoken to me about not teaching if kids came back full time. We've had 100% of our faculty there 100% of the time. I mean, barring forced quarantine a few times, but to me, I'm very proud of that. We've remained open and the faculty have been amazing. We've looked at all the angles. And again, I want to echo this. Should they have been told we're going to go back full time, they would have done it. The consequences would have been severe, but I just want to get on the record that I think it's maybe with some underappreciated what the faculty have done this year. And we are one of the largest schools, and that means that we have probably the largest faculty returning rate and consistency rate this entire year.
Joanna?
I just wanted to thank you all for looking at all of these out of the box solutions. I know this is a very difficult time. I'm even surprised and impressed that City and SATEC could even consider having 7th and 8th grade back, just with the sheer size of your school. I don't even know how you'll be able to do that, but I trust you've figured that out. But I completely understand how the high school is not able to make this happen. It's just too difficult. I mean, in the little school that I teach at, we had 20 staff members out, the other day because of the close contact thing. And yeah, it's crazy. So it's a constant crisis management day-to-day thing. And back to something that Brett said when he said that it's also important for consistency. And as unideal as 2 days, the hybrid schedule is, at least it is consistent. And to change things up right now with 6 weeks left to school is also very challenging. You would literally have to focus entirely on behavior management and classroom expectations and like reorienting kids to school all over again. And for some kids that would be beneficial. I'm not suggesting it wouldn't be, but academically, you wouldn't, you're not going to really be focusing a lot on academics. It's going to be more so on the social emotional, which is absolutely hugely beneficial, but that can also hopefully happen, in the summer too. And I'm excited and interested to hear about the recovery plans and the summer plans. But I know we want to get everybody back in school, but that also will be very, very overwhelming and taxing for everybody.
Just kind of piggyback off what Joanna said, and I don't know, Brett, if you've said this or not, and is summer even a consideration of any plans for the summer to bring any kids back at all? Or is it really too early to even address that?
Oh, no, we've been addressing it, not answering it, but we've been addressing
Okay.
it. It's of
Yeah.
huge importance to look at summer engagement opportunities.
Yeah, so still in the beginning. Okay. Yeah, I just figured.
Yeah, not the beginning, but we haven't quite got underway yet.
No, I'm anxious to hear if you if you need any help, let us know, obviously. But thank you very much.
Careful with that.
Hey, no,
Yes.
that's what we're here for.
Okay, then I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say, I hope that I wasn't suggesting that the administration wasn't doing everything possible, or suggesting any type of disrespect. I feel like as a board member, when families and teachers are asking this of me, I think it's important to get the answers out there in the public, and that's why I've asked all these questions.
Understood.
Oh yeah, I took no exception to it. I understand that. They're asking the
Okay.
same thing of me.
We need
Yep.
to get out there. I agree.
So Kevin, any additional reporting?
I went on long enough.
Thank you. I don't know if you mentioned it. I think you started to mention it. Even though the CDC changes their guidelines, Vermont follows the Vermont Department of Health guidelines, and they typically are 2 to 3 weeks behind the CDC in adopting or morphing their guidelines. And we have the same stuff that comes up at the hospital. But I think as a state, we really can't complain because Vermont's done pretty well in how they've managed this pandemic. So more power to them if they have to contemplate a little bit longer to get things right.
Yeah, my girlfriend is a teacher out in Oregon, and their kids are going back to school next Thursday for the first time.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
so-
right. I think we've covered the COVID update. Thank you all for that. Next item on the agenda is to amend the truancy officer designation. So you'll recall when we had our organizational meeting, we were a little iffy on some of these. So we need to take an action. So I need a motion that would indicate that Heather Fitzgibbons and Matt Bloom were the truancy officers at BFA, and that at SATEC and Fairfield Central School or Center School, it's the principals, and at St. Albans City School, it's the principal and assistant principal. And also indicate that Alexis is the district truancy officer. And I think we had Alexis's name in our information sheet, but I don't know if we had her specifically as the district truancy officer. So would someone make that motion, please?
So moved.
Thanks, Al. Is there a second?
I'll second, or whoever.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, next item on the agenda is under new business, and it's the first policy that we have, and it's public participation at board meetings, and we're gonna have a discussion. And it says me, but I'm tapping into Kevin and his expertise on this, and we'll tag team with him. So Kevin?
Well, I'm sure you've had a chance to look at it, so I'm not going to read the policy through and through. I just want to give you a little history behind it, as well as maybe some clarification relative to the policy. Mostly everything we do, not everything. Certainly this one is a model that comes from the Vermont School Boards Association. They keep a library of policies, and they have one for public participation at board meetings. And within their policies, why we like to use them a lot is because they already utilize all the statutes, Vermont statutes, when they're writing it. They have lawyers who take care of it. And so we often use their models. This particular model is generally used throughout the state. There may be slight wording changes here and there because it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's generally the same throughout. This was initially put in place before my time. And I don't know when, but I do know that when we started redoing policies under the Maple Run name, we looked at all the policies one time and did discussion and get through the whole process, and then you guys approved them, often without changes, sometimes with minor changes of wording, like putting Maple Run in. So this one was actually done in July of 2016 into place. The policy is there, first off, to make sure, to ensure that our statutes are followed. And there is a statute, I can't give you the exact number, but it's somewhere on the policy, that specifically says the public must have a time during the board meeting to speak if they need to air anything. And we do it at the beginning. We follow a certain agenda and put it there. It states specific things about it, like who can speak, and things like that. And it talks about, and this is where some people always feel a little uncomfortable, and I've noticed it with some of our new members when they come in. It speaks specifically about the board is prohibited from speaking, first off, about anything that's not on the agenda. So that's why sometimes when people speak and you feel uncomfortable because you're not responding to them, but that is the reason why. That's basically the whole bit on it. So I'll answer, or first off, I'll send it back to Nilda to see if she has anything she wants to add to that. And then I can questions.
I think Joanna has a question, so let's grab her question first.
You're muted.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, I have too many tabs open. So I actually went to the model policy and I'm gonna open it up right now. 24, nope, wrong one. There we go. And it doesn't say anything on the model policy about prohibiting board members to address the public. So because I was interested in this as well. And it just says persons who may address the board, and those are both similar, right? And then after that, it says public comment on agenda items. And it doesn't say anything that nobody is allowed or prohibited to talk to anybody for public comment. It just doesn't say anything at all. It says the chair will ask for comments on agenda items before action is taken by the board. When the number of people wishing to speak is large, they talk about that. Public input on items not on the agenda, they talk about that. But there is no clause in here that prohibits anybody to speak to the public after they have presented any information. And that is right from the VSBA, public participation at board meetings, and this is from the model policy. So that's something that somehow got put in. I definitely saw that in other schools because I wanted to look around to see what it looked like in other SUs, but it is not in the state model policy.
Can I ask a question?
I would just first say that could very well be true because, as I said, boards on non-mandatory policies do have the option to make some changes.
So do you think that is in there though? Does that help protect the part about the open meeting law where you're not supposed to really discuss stuff unless it's been warned?
Correct.
You know, I think that kind of protects us there to have that language there. Not that we would necessarily make any decision based on public comment that night. It would always have to be warned at a subsequent meeting. But I'm thinking that's where that sort of was aiming to help the board members, you know, with those issues. But someone else had a question. Was that Susan?
Yeah, I had a question.
Go ahead, and then we'll do UL.
I do not have the policy in front of me, and I might have blanked out for a couple minutes when you guys were talking about this, but I'm pretty sure I read that we could ask clarifying questions to community members during that public comment section.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, just thank you.
Even if it's not a topic on the agenda.
Right, if it's a clarifying question.
Right, and what Grant had, yes, and what Grant had mentioned, what his, I believe, Grant, please correct me if I'm wrong, but his discussion point was that even if we tabled it for this current meeting, the one that the community member spoke to, that we could put it on the agenda for next time and making sure, and so then we are at least addressing the concerns, so it doesn't go unnoticed, uncommunicated, and unaddressed.
Agreed, and that's the conversation I had with Kevin when we were reviewing this stuff. I said, you know, if something came up, we would put it on that section item for a future agenda and make sure that we address that at a future meeting, depending on what the topic is and how much prep time would be required in order to be able to discuss it. we would do that, but I would like that to be our practice for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. Al?
Under 34, 38, under public comment. The purpose of addressing the board, meaning it is giving testimony to the board. A visitor should not expect that the board will engage in conversation or answer any direct questions. The board may decide to provide an answer to special questions at a later time if those questions are provided in writing.
Yep.
So it does prevent the
Yeah.
board from engaging in conversation.
Does the board have any other questions related to that policy, public participation at board meetings?
Yeah, granted.
Grant, sorry. I had to,
Sorry,
I had
yeah.
to scroll across to find you.
No, I just thought I'd clarify since I did, I think, bring this up, sort of initially. The idea was that in what I was seeing, or I think I was seeing was, we would have public comment, and then it would sort of get, the public would provide their comment, generally with no feedback from the board, which is fine, if not preferred, according to our policy. And then it would either sort of come back around or it wouldn't. And we didn't really have any controls sort of in place to ensure that it came back around. And that was my concern, was that if there's public comment, there should be some kind of an action, either to table it or to put it on a future agenda, or to assign it as an action to the administration to comment on it later, or bring it back to us. But there should be something there that sort of closes that loop whenever there's public comment. And I think as it stands, that's not necessary. I'm not sure it has to be necessary by policy, but it should be. I think it would be a good practice of a responsive board.
I totally agree. And as long as I'm chairing the board, that will be my practice.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Peter.
Thanks, Peter. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, I just think what we really need to be careful of, if you're going to take comments and comment on them, is that we begin to micromanage. I think that a lot of the comments that were brought up by Mayor Smith and whatnot were things that should follow the chain of command. And in our very code of ethics, it says our responsibility is to see that the schools are well run, but not to run them. And I think that the board has to be careful that we don't step across there and start making decisions that are up to people that we pay to make that decision.
Agreed. Thank you.
I think Al had a hand up too. Am I right?
Who did?
Al?
I think he spoke. Al, did you have your hand up again?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, thank you.
The grants request, that it should carry on. If it is something that needs to be carried on, the discretion of the chair would be that it's something to be put on the future agenda.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the case in yours, and that is covered here, only I lost it.
Yeah.
It is weird. But that is at your discretion, Nelda.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, anything else related to public participation at board meeting? Okay, thank you. Next one is public comment about personnel. So this is actually considered an administrative procedure and not a policy, but policies and procedures are kind of lumped together in the manual. So Kevin, public complaint about personnel.
Well, just first, because I don't mean to in any way insult your intelligence, but in case some people, especially new people, aren't sure of the exact details about what the policy is versus a procedure. A policy, the board approves, the board runs on their policies. The procedures are administrative procedures created by the administration, almost always or always brought to the board. We want them to know that it's occurring, and that they're okay with it, but they are administrative procedures. And this happens to be a procedure, again, taken not completely, but close to verbatim from what VSBA has for an issue around public complaints. This one I think is probably less controversial in many ways, because in most organizations, there's some sort of hierarchical way of doing business. And this just talks about the complaint system. So you always bring it to the person who complains about first. And that's true throughout the system that we have. So if somebody comes to me to complain about Mike Campbell, and no, that doesn't happen every day. But if it did, my response would be, have you spoken to Mike? And it always should start at that level. And I'll tell you, my experience has been that 90% of the complaints are handled at that level and never go any further. Because you're talking directly to the person, and it's only respectful to do that, and it's that person who knows more about it. If, on the other hand, the complaint goes there and they do not get an answer they like, then they go up the ladder. And the next step, in this specific case, they would go to Brett and say, Mike Campbell did this, we don't like it, he gave us this explanation, we want you to handle it. So it's handled how Brett decides to do it, depending on the situation. If they continue to feel that this wasn't what they want and they're really set on it, the next step is myself. And if that doesn't get where they want to go, they have the right to go to the board. And this talks a little bit about what would happen at that point if it goes to the board to handle the situation. But it's just making sure we start at the appropriate person and then work themselves up. So a lot of times you'll talk to me either individually or in a meeting and say, so-and-so is very, very upset with something that happened by so-and-so. What do I tell them? The answer would be, just given whatever situation, ask them to go to the appropriate person first and let them know that. That's generally it. Dilda, do you have anything to add?
No, that's how I understand it also. I think the question I always have is, when I read this, is sometimes people complain about things and not necessarily personnel, but sometimes you can always track it back to the responsible administrator. And as Kevin pointed out to me earlier, the buck stops at him anyway, because he is at the top of the food pile there, whatever it's called. Food chain, I guess is the correct term. So, we could always track it back to at least the superintendent. So, ultimately, it's always ultimately about a person. So as far as that goes, that was I was having that word conflict, but I'm good with it the way it is. Anyone else have any questions?
Grant.
Grant.
Yeah, my issue with this policy also goes back to the wording, and essentially framing everything as though it's an issue with personnel, because if you do have a complaint about an event or a state of affairs, those, for example, BFA being, remote, or, the basketball situation that we heard about a few weeks ago, right? Those are not complaints about people. There may be people responsible for that state of affairs, but that's not what the public is concerned about, right? They don't care who's responsible. They care about the situation. So,
Systemic
if
issues.
right. So if the
Systems.
procedure is going to have step one, for any complaint, be to identify the person responsible for that state of affairs or event, and then go through the chain of command. I think that should be part of the policy. I think that should be step one. And there should be a procedure, how to identify those people, where to direct that type of a complaint once it's deemed to be a complaint.
So respectfully, that's not your decision. That's what Nilda was saying. When you get something like that, you're not sure where it goes. There's one place it definitely doesn't go, and that's the board. So if you're not sure where it goes, send them to me. I'm your representative. And
So do we have a procedure for how to deal with complaints on events or a state of affairs? We only have a policy on how to deal with complaints on personnel.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Right.
Al?
That's not true. The first, no matter whether it's a situation or whatever, it is precipitated by an individual. So you can't create something that exists without having someone that is at the forefront of that particular issue. So in that case, the first, number one, under respective complaints, the comment or the complainant shall be encouraged first to bring a complaint to the individual concerned. That's the very first. So Grant, no matter what the situation is, that's been created by somebody. Unless you can give me an example where it isn't.
I'll give you an example.
Sure, go ahead.
Thanks, Susan.
All right, so, and this doesn't have anything to do with the educational system, but yesterday I called the mayor in St. Albans because in the past couple of weeks I've been driving north on Main Street, and last week I really kind of, I'm going to say, freaked out because someone was crossing in the crosswalk from Twigs over to City Hall Park, or the park, Taylor Park, and I thought someone was going to die. And when I was traveling south on Main Street, I realized that at the City Hall crosswalk has a flashing light. Okay. The Twigs crosswalk does not. And when you have the UPS truck double park there, if you're headed south, you can't see people coming across the street until they're out into the middle of the lane. I had no idea who to call. I couldn't figure it out. I just called Tim Smith and said, Tim, I need to pass this on. I know you guys know the person to talk to about this. This is a systems issue that needs to be fixed. So that's my example. Again, not educational, but I do have, what was that?
Hey, hang on, Al. She's not quite finished, Al.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You did exactly what I'm saying. If you took that and transferred it to a school district, I would be the mayor. You would be calling me.
Agreed.
Okay. So my one other comment that before Grant brought up the systems issues was, I've been in supervisory positions before. I've worked as a supervisor, acute care supervisor forever. And what I know is this: often if people have concerns about the teacher, about the therapist, about someone that they're working in, maybe it's just healthcare, but they're afraid to talk to that person directly because their mother's in the nursing home and they don't want their mother to be punished because they've raised a complaint. So I think, and I could translate that to school systems as well. I think that it's important because a lot of people don't know this process, that we can coach them through it. You know, if someone came to me, Kevin, you were talking about this before, and had a complaint about one of the staff therapists, I'd say, so when you talk to them about this, what did they say? Well, I haven't talked with them. So first you need to talk with them and you come back to me. If you can't talk to them, then both of us need to talk to them together. You know, I can coach you through this. And if that doesn't work, then we work our way up the chain. But I think a lot of people, I'll say community members, don't know how to do that for themselves. So if this is the policy, I think it's important that we all know how to help them through it, including administrators. That's all.
Okay. Al, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, it's fine.
Okay. Joe?
I quickly just want to add, Al, I don't know that anybody's like disagreeing, but I think the issue is how the policy is written. And I think that's what, again, I don't mean to speak for you, Grant, but when I read the public complaints about personnel, it is about personnel. There isn't a policy that talks about complaining about just issues. And so I don't know if that's what people's issues are with it. It's just trying to be able to separate. And mostly, I agree with you, Al. Most of the time you can put an issue with a person, right? Or who that would be, who would be the supervisor of that issue. I totally get that. But I do also think that what struck me about the situation is that if people feel the need to come to the board about something, what that says to me is that they're not feeling heard. So what is that about?
See, you're making an assumption there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think it's sometimes both things. They're not feeling heard or they just want to make a statement.
Possibly.
Sometimes people just want to go on the record.
Possibly.
You know?
Possibly. Absolutely. But either way, I think it's just important to make sure that our policy speaks to how to take care of issues that don't belong to a certain person. Okay. Just an issue or a systems issue versus personnel. And maybe it does, but it might just be something good to look at. That's all I'm saying.
So what's the pleasure of the board on this? There's been 2 or 3 people that have been vocal and quite a few people who haven't said much.
I guess
That's because the loud mouths keep talking.
No, I have a question. I have
at the same time.
I have a question though. I guess what is it just not understanding this policy or updating the policy, or is it just a matter of people on the board understanding how to navigate? Like if somebody does come to us, or people come up to me in the grocery store a lot, there's just a lot of times I'm able to direct them to certain people without having to refer back to policy. I guess I see where people point and maybe just the title of the procedure is definitely misleading. I guess I'm just struggling with, I think we have the right resources available to us. And as a board, we can always go to Nilda or, Kevin. We have those people to go to. I don't think we're sliding anybody. I guess I'm just a little confused at what the ask is here from people.
So Jack, go ahead.
So what I see here is that the policy tends to be people specific. And Grant brings up an excellent point that oftentimes people aren't complaining about a person or a staff member, but so it's not a personnel issue, but it's an event or it's a situation or whatever. It's something that they want to complain about. So the wording, I don't want to be a bunch of wordsmiths and we rewrite the whole policy, but it shouldn't be people specific. There should be either another policy that deals with complaints about events, situations, systems. I'm not thinking of a good word, but an area or something. And you go to the person who's in charge of that. And you're not complaining about the person, but you're complaining about the situation. So obviously there's a void. There's something, oftentimes people do complain about something a teacher did, something a coach did, something a bus driver did, whatever. But what Grant presents is that it may not be a person at all. It may be a situation, an event, a circumstance. So I see a need for a different policy to cover that.
A different procedure to cover systems issues.
Correct.
Grant?
Either if it truly is the intent that all complaints get framed as complaints about personnel, then you could build that into our current policy. I do think that sort of limits, some of what the board has been dealing with, in a way. So, if the issue with SROs had come through under sort of that, system, I think we would have handled it differently. I don't think we would have taken a board action to convene a committee, right, to, come back and then, make a recommendation. You would have said, okay, there's a complaint about SROs. Who's the person responsible for SROs? And you just would have, gone through, the chain of command that way. So, I do think it would be problematic potentially. It would be a little bit different to do things, just that way, to say, all situations and events need to link back to a person. And then through chain of command, because I do think it would change the way that the board behaves now. But I don't know if the answer is to have a completely separate policy either. And maybe we need a recommendation from from Kevin as to how they would like to organize that.
My thought is, Doug, this is an administrative procedure. I think we've heard what you're saying. I personally do not think you need a separate policy or procedure, but there may be some wordsmithing that can be done to add.
I think that might be the way to go because, as you know, Kevin, I struggled with the same thing, right? And it wasn't until we had the conversation where you basically said everything tracked back to a person. I mean, I can accept that, but if we as a board are a little bit hung up on the lingo, then obviously any public is even going to be more hung up. So if you could, administration could look at this public complaint about personnel procedure and offer some recommendations for some wordsmithing. I would not personally, I wouldn't like another policy. It would be great to have one complaint policy that addresses, either has an A and a B section or section 1, section 2, and addresses both issues as contributing factors and address. And it seems to me, I mean, I can envision a pretty simple fix with a couple of additional words and maybe the title and an opening sentence or something.
Yeah, I think it's just some clarity around. I think that about personnel kind of is misleading, and I see where people can say that, but I think we're just trying to fit it, all the definitions under this, but we need it to be broader to include everything else. I guess I don't know.
Okay, so you understand, Kevin, what our request is? Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the SRO committee facilitator requesting additional hours. And let me just open up this. One computer keeps turning off, the other one doesn't stay lit. Okay, so Emma Mulvaney Stanek is our facilitator, and she is currently in a 40-hour contract, which she's being paid, what she was paid $4,500 for. She has requested additional hours, and those additional hours are 31 new hours. And those 31 hours consist of planning, facilitation, and support hours. So it turns out that there are 2 additional meetings. So she uses it's 3-hour prep and a 2-hour meeting. So with 2 additional meetings, that's 10 hours. And then committee support, there are 3 subcommittees, and she uses 2 hours for each of the subcommittees for support, and that's 6 additional hours. And then the follow-up, she's talking about the March, April, and May meeting follow-ups. And there's 5 hours a month of follow-up, which is 15 hours. So if you do the math, that is 31 additional hours. And that would cost us $3,481. And that's the request that has come forward. And that sort of happened at the end of Jeff's tenure as chair. So I sort of inherited all that documentation, and I've had one conversation with her. But I think, obviously we have gotten a report from the group, and it's they have quite a formidable task in front of them to try to sift through all the information. So let's have some discussion about that. Can somebody make a motion to approve this, just so we can get a discussion going?
So moved.
Okay, Al,
Okay.
and everybody, a lot of people seconded it, but okay, Al and Joanna, I think, seconded. Al made the motion and Joanna seconded. Okay, so feelings, suggestions, recommendations, concerns,
Nelda,
accolades.
I have a question. What is the timeline to complete all this? Is 31 going to be enough? Because I don't know if we had timelines that they were going to present back their final findings, or did we?
Well, their last meeting, I think, is May 27th. So it's the first meeting in June that we'll get their findings.
Are they on track for that?
Yep.
They are. Okay.
Yep. Yep. So, when we were originally offered her, when she gave us her proposal, she made 2 different options, and we took the option of 40 hours. She had made a 40-hour option and I think a 55-hour option, and we took the lesser one because that's what Jeff decided to do, because we gave him authority to make this decision. So, she had sort of written 2 different proposals, playing them out, but in each proposal, it was all about, planning, facilitating, and supporting. So that's kind of her role. So does anybody have any opposition to finishing up with this project the way we started? Peter?
My point is, she accepted it at 40 hours, and now she's saying, I couldn't do the job during 40 hours. There's a lot of capable people on that board who are working, and I'm not particularly sure. I've been to watched some of their meetings. I'm not particularly sure how integral that is. I would vote against this. I think that's a lot of money.
Joanna?
I think that her role is extremely integral, and it's keeping people on track and making sure that that people are using facts and data and not just anecdotal information. The 40 hours was based on when Steve and I originally put forth trying to get it done before town meeting day. So those were the hours, up until then. So I think knowing what the whole picture looked like, I don't know that, I don't think that to say that she couldn't get the job done in 40 hours is really appropriate, because after that, the board voted to allow people as much time as they needed to. And that committee has opted to take more time, and the subcommittees and so on. So originally it was because we were trying to get it in at a certain date.
Thank you for that clarification. She's the only paid person on this committee, just so y'all know. Everyone else is volunteer, and if you heard their presentation, I mean, there are some pretty committed people
Yes.
to working through this. Alexis isn't here, is she, today? Martin, you're on the committee. Do you have any commentary about that as far as how you feel it's going and how she's doing as a facilitator? Hate to put you on the spot, but I just did.
Yeah, I think she's been very beneficial in leading the committee, even up to the point where it has reached now with the results that you saw at the last presentation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And who else? Susan.
I'm going to
So
stop my video.
Can I just say something? I could only see 9 of you at a time. So if the person that's going like this and raising their hand isn't in my view, I don't know you're doing it. So I just need for you to yell out. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to turn off my video so that I don't lose my Wi-Fi totally. I totally support what Johanna says. I feel like this is a really, really important issue for our community. And I feel like it's important to give full effort. And I feel like if we say that, you need to finish up in 40 hours, we're probably not going to be done. And we're going to be making a judgment on unfinished information or incomplete information. That's all.
Right. And I did look at her original proposal, and there was in that proposal, it did talk about her hourly rate also, so I think there was always opportunity to add hours if we needed to or whatever, without like a magic new number or a new formula or anything. Al.
I think it's important, if we've put this much effort into getting a reasonable job done, that we shouldn't leave it hanging.
Yes.
Or I made the motion, so it gives the
Thank you, Al.
Anybody else have any other comment that is a position that you haven't stated yet, or?
I know I've already spoken, but I also just want to say that this has been an extremely heated topic, and people have had a lot of very intense and emotional commentary, and even just the last meeting, they needed to restate norms and whatnot for the community. So I think without having somebody there who's kind of in charge and who feels super comfortable calling people out for, behavior that needed to be reeled in, I think would be a mistake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for those of you that were not on the board when we first initiated this, the whole premise was that the board wasn't going to manage this task force, that we needed to have it done by an external party, and that community members who were, hopefully not already committed to one side or another of the issue would be open enough to serve on the committee. If we could have easily asked an administrator or had a board member or somebody for free facilitate it. But I think this sort of made it unbiased for me to have an external person come in and just do a project, basically manage a project. I know it's money, it's a lot of money, and we look at every penny and we're scrutinizing things, but I think if we don't finish it, it's a half-assed project and I don't want to do it halfway. And I said that out loud while we're being recorded, so that's also nice. But anyway, that's my position.
No, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Obviously, I'm new to this, so if I overstep, please let me know. You said that there was an opportunity for an hourly rate. So let's say, it's the extra 30 or whatever it was going to be, and she doesn't use that whole 30 hours. Are we still mandated to pay the full 30 hours or can we pay her by the hourly rate?
Well, that's a good question. I would think that she would not charge us for hours not used. But the situation that we had set up with her before was we paid her a certain amount every month. It was like we gave her basically a retainer, and then we gave her 3 monthly payments to get through the fund amount that we had calculated. The way she broke it down, I mean, they have the meeting scheduled already. They have their whole timeline all scheduled. So I'd be really surprised if she were to use fewer hours than this. But we don't have any reason to believe that she's not trustworthy as far as her accounting goes of her hours. Any more thoughts on this, or are we ready to take a vote?
I think Jack might have had a question before. Yeah.
Jack, okay, thanks.
I was just concerned that at first it started as sort of a, talking about the, payment to the person, but then we, I was wondering whether we should have been talking about the facilitator in open session, but I don't think we talked about her ability or anything, so I think we're okay. So forget it. Forget my comment.
Well, I mean, I don't think we got into, it that deep, but I don't think it's unreasonable to just ask, for example, if Alexis had been here also, she's the other person on the committee, that I would have asked her also just to get a take on the two administrators that we have here, how they're feeling about it. I don't know. I think that's just a little common sense and I didn't feel like I was like delving into their personnel.
Yeah, I think we're okay. Forget it. I was just, it made me a little nervous, but I think it's okay.
Okay, thanks, Jack. I'm glad you're protecting me from any libel lawsuit. Peter.
Would Mr. Corey be willing to amend his motion to say that we will pay her the hourly wage not to exceed $3,481?
Yeah.
So does everyone understand the new motion at that point then? It'll be the hourly wage not to exceed the amount that you mentioned.
Or not to exceed the number of hours that she mentioned.
You can make a friendly amendment to that.
So basically, just to clarify that, Peter, though, I mean, her proposal is $3,481. If we approve $3,481, whether we say not to exceed or not, it's not going to be more than that. But I'm happy with those 3 words, not to exceed, if that makes everyone happier and more comfortable with it. But you get what I'm saying, Peter? I don't think it changes.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
So does that mean if she doesn't use the 31 hours, we'll still pay her versus, let's say, and again, so we're going to pay her up to 31 hours at her hourly rate.
Right. I mean, just for the record, I had a conversation with her right after that one meeting when there was all that chat and activity, and just, basically talked to her about making sure she had a handle on the group. And she shared with me, she's spending more hours than what she's accounting for, because there was a lot going on early on. So I think that we don't have to worry about her sort of padding the process. I think she's probably ready to get rid of this project, actually. But I would like us to, if you're willing, Al, to change that motion slightly to say not to exceed $3,481. The seconder is willing to accept that amendment to the motion, that we run a vote on that. Al?
Well, let me clarify something. Peter's making an amendment to the original. So it should be, we can
He's requesting.
That's
he's
fine.
He's requesting that you make an amendment to your original.
You can't request me to make an amendment.
Yeah.
But
The first one first.
So are you willing to make an amendment to your original motion? Or do we want to go through a process, kill your motion and make a new amendment? I mean,
to read the way. Yes.
Say again, Al. Can you just repeat what you said, Al, please?
I move to amend the motion, I'm getting emotional, to not to exceed 30 hours.
Okay, that's a different amendment. The original, I think the request was to amend the motion to read not to exceed $3,481.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Does that work?
fine.
Joanna? You were the seconder?
The mic's off.
No,
It
it's
makes-
not.
Oh, okay.
It's not off. I'm just troubled that we're having this conversation about $3,400 when we much bigger amounts of money for,
So-
I mean,
Right.
you just said that you've had a conversation with her, Nilda, that she's not even charging us for all the hours. So
The
what
original
if?
hours, early on,
Okay, all right.
early on, when she
So,
had to set everything up.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know.
so this friendly, here's my position, this friendly amendment covers her request and perhaps makes the motion pass close to unanimously, if not unanimously. And I think that's a win for all of us.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna call a vote. All in favor of the motion as amended, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, any noes? Any abstentions? Thank you so much. That carried unanimously, and it was a really good discussion. And I appreciated everyone's input on that. Okay. Moving on to 7D, we have the Fairfield Community Center request. Dr. Odell, I think, is going to do that. You still on, or have you gone to sleep?
Half and half. So we are, the Fairfield Community Center every year makes a request for about $1,000 to fund transportation for their Black Creek Summer Adventure Camp. It's a camp that runs for about 6 weeks. It serves a pretty significant number of kids out in the country. And we have in the past been able to help fund this with a little $1,000 grant to them. They don't actually pay for the bus driver. They just have to pay the bus company for the use of the bus. And in the past, you all have been very generous and have agreed to do this. Other community centers have not asked for such a thing before. And so the request has come again. They did not run the camp last year, of course.
So we just got a motion from Al. Is there a second? Susan, is that a second or a question? Second, okay.
Both.
Oh, question. Okay, second and a question. Okay, question.
So I don't know if it's a question, but maybe more clarifying that I'm pretty sure that Black Creek Summer Camp is open to all students, not just students from Fairfield. So I just wanted to, it's not just the country kids.
You're absolutely right. We do get kids from other towns who participate in the camp for sure, because it's like 7:30 in the morning until 4:30 in the afternoon, and it runs for 6 weeks, and it's like $150 a week. So it's a ridiculously good deal for families.
Dr. Odell, oh, sorry, Susan, go ahead. You're probably going to ask what I say.
No, I was just going to say, and it's a really amazing camp. It's an amazing camp. So that's the other reason students end up there.
Dr. Odell, is there a way that people can find out about it a little bit more to kind of spread the word? Because I know Susan actually sent it to me last year. If I don't have the link anymore, but maybe put it out if other people might be interested.
I can definitely do that. I'll share that. I can share it with Joanna, and then she can share it with all of you. I know that there are rules about how you share stuff on email.
Yep.
I already,
fine.
yeah.
No,
I
that's
have
great.
the applications too. I already,
Awesome.
yeah.
No, thank you.
How many students are impacted by this?
I don't know what her total capacity is, but in typical years, there are about 30 kids.
Great.
You know, it's a smaller program, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's effective.
Per week.
It's
so
per week. And
yeah,
the theme
so it could
is
be
different
150.
each week. Yeah, so it's different kids each week, just to.
Right. well, for that price, it would be my kids every week for sick week. I think we're ready to take a vote. All in favor of Fairfield Community Center project donation signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank
Okay,
you.
next item on the agenda is information about graduation. And I was cautioned that this is preliminary and in the thinking stages. So just all know that. And I guess all the principals have something to say. Kevin, you want to take the lead? And
Actually, they don't. I will take the lead on it. And the reason they don't is because we don't know. You asked us to put it on and we put it on early, but again, because guidance hasn't come in, it's going to specifically speak around graduation as they did last year. We don't know. We certainly want to do something. Certainly the principals are looking into it, especially I know Brett has been looking into options and has talked about that actually in his YouTube thing with parents. But we don't have a good idea. We do not want to put something out there and have people think this is what we're going to do because we're not sure. I can pretty much tell you we're not going to have 2,000 people in Collins Pearly tennis courts for high school graduation, but we are hoping that we could do something perhaps outside. And Brett, I will open it up to you if you specifically have anything you want to talk about as any options that you're looking at, knowing full well that we can't say for sure.
Sure. We're also Teresa's sending out information every Tuesday, updating the senior parents on this. And we're going to have another YouTube live event. I believe it's next week. Talking about senior events, which we met on today, we're meeting on again tomorrow. So we have a pretty good idea now that the governor's statement of the 3-step system, and that actually really increases dramatically our opportunities with a live event, which is what we're planning. So we are planning a live graduation. Again, as Kevin has said, there's so many variables still, but that's the plan up at the Collins Pearly complex. And we'll keep people updated as we go. So we've been planning 3 types of events. And at this point, the live event looks more realistic than ever. And that's what we're organizing around.
Thanks, Brett. I would say that I hope in the next 2 weeks at our next meeting, we'll be able to say, heck, we need that amount of time to plan. We just are waiting for that guidance.
okay. Any other graduations at all from the 8th grade level or?
Okay.
No? Okay. All right, item 7F is the bid award for bleacher replacements for SATEC. Angela.
Yes, thank you, Nelda. So you'll see in the packet, there are 4 quotes for the bleacher replacement in our gymnasium. Our current bleachers are original from the old Catholic high school. They were put in 1965. They are not ADA compliant for seating, and there are no safety rails. The new bleachers will be up to code. They will be electric. My request is that you would please approve the quote for the tri-state bid, which comes in at $111,500. The one bid that's lower, we do not recommend because it does not give us the same amount of seating, and they cannot guarantee our time frame requirements because we need to have it done by the end of June. So that would be my recommendation, please.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can you clarify for me, Angela, why the end of June?
We're hoping to have some summer programming in July, and we'd like to have it done and not have that big of a project happening if we're allowed to have children in the building.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other discussion or questions for Angela? Everybody ready to move on this motion? Okay, I have a question. Where's the money coming from?
We
Again?
have a building project plan, and this has been budgeted and planned out for many years, and we're just getting to it. So
That's
it's
great.
all set. Yep.
Thank you. I just wanted you to say that for the record.
Sure.
Okay, all in favor of the bid for Tri-State for $111,500, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We're looking for a bid award for BFA Chromebooks, and who's doing that? Is that Brett or is someone else doing that? BFA Chromebooks.
Or is it Martin or Brett?
Is it Martin?
Brett, you want to take it, or I can?
Who has the info? Martin, do you want to just give us a quick?
Sure. So we have 3 bids to maintain our Chromebook 1-to-1, which served BFA very well this year, especially with the pandemic. We are taking the middle bid, not the cheapest, because the middle one is the only one that could assure estimated delivery date, which is more important to us now, because if we look at our last year's Chromebook requests, they arrived pretty late. We were past the start of the year. And so because we got burned once, this time we want to prioritize dedicated delivery date.
And the amount of that middle bid was how much again, please?
Let's see.
I just don't have it open in front of me.
Yep, the 63,745.
Thank you. And who's the vendor?
SimQuest.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for that for rest of our discussion? Did someone make a motion? Did you make a motion, Al? Is there? Thanks. Jack seconded that motion. Okay, any further discussion related to Chromebooks?
Just one question.
Yes, sir.
I mean, there were a ton of Chromebooks purchased last year for COVID. I think the justification at the time was essentially that every kid needed one. And maybe I'm mistaken or misremembering. What's this? Are there some that are now obsolete that need replacing, or is it more kids, or where's this need coming from?
Who knows the answer? Brett, Martin?
I can give it a go. Or Bill, if you had something. Okay, so to maintain our 1-to-1 at BFA, which is new, I think BFA was the last school to become 1-to-1, and now a whole district is 1-to-1, which essentially takes care of one of the 7 recommendations from the audit that was done for the tech. Now, to maintain this from year to year, we'll need to be replenishing a slew of Chromebooks. And so this is part of that. So either the limit would be the Chromebook is damaged, or the limit would be that the Google Chrome management license is expired.
So is this essentially what we should be expecting every year, is about this level of replacement? Is this typical, or is this high, low? I would expect that since we bought so many last year, this should be on the low side, since there were so many new ones going into the system.
Yes, so this should be typical from year to year.
Okay.
I think in the past, maybe we've held off on replacement. And so there was a big chunk that needed to be replaced, which is an anomaly. But going forward from year to year, this is what should be expected.
What we should be expecting. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So, yes.
You have one piece of detail for Grant. I'm trying to. Grant, what you saw last year was about 20% of the 20 to 25% of the fleet that's at BFA that was purchased.
Right.
Every school is at about a 5-year replacement for a Chromebook, which is really pushing it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to see about that much every year, give or take little bits.
Okay, thanks for that. All right, so we have a motion to approve SimQuest bid for Chromebooks at BFA at the cost of $63,745. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we now have an item about the contract for KBS, and Martha,
Yes,
can you take that for us?
yes. So I am looking for authorization from the school board to renew the contract with Cattell, Brannigan and Sargent, who is the auditing firm that has been doing our audits. And I'm holding them to the maximum amount of increase that they can based on the NEEP that the Agency of Education has approved for contracts for FY '22.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Isn't there also a section there that you want to be the signer of the contract?
Yes. Which, if you approve the renewal, I would be authorized to sign it anyway.
Okay. Any discussion? Anybody have any questions? All right, so did we get a motion for that? Al, did you beat me to the motion?
Yes, Al and Jack, yes.
Thank you.
Al and Nina, sorry.
Al and Nina, sorry, I can't keep up with Al and he makes the motion so quickly. So we have a motion to renew the contract with KBS for their annual audit at the NEEP increase, whatever that was called. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the FY '22 Teacher Master Agreement. Now, is there any issue related to this that might not be able to be discussed in public session? I think we can do it in public session. We don't have to be in private session. Correct?
Yes,
So
you're fine.
what,
That should be fine, Nelda.
yeah,
Yeah,
what we need to do is basically ratify it's the professional staff master agreement. You received a copy. We sort of fast track that so that we don't have to send letters of intent out to the teachers, and we can send out contracts to the teachers. So that's eliminating a lot of extra work. And I'm sure that the central office had to kind of pedal a little faster than usual to get that all done and turn it around in the short amount of time that, because we just approved this last Wednesday, right? I think, seems like it wasn't that long ago.
About that.
So what you'll notice is that it's a 3.11% increase, and there is no additional wording, and it's a one-year contract. And I just want to state that there was a give and take with both the teachers and the board. And we reached a conclusion that, you know, some people will joke and say that neither parties were happy with, and I'd like to say that both parties were happy with, right? So that's what I'm asking you all to ratify tonight. I did receive advanced notification that a couple of people will be abstaining tonight because of their connection with members of the school system, and as to maintain a perception, a real or perceived perception of conflict of interest, they're going to abstain. So in order to have this pass, we're going to need 5 in the positive. I don't think that's going to be an issue, but I think Al just made a motion there while I'm giving my soliloquy. So thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor. I think I'm going to have to take a roll call, right?
Yep.
All in favor of the, I'm going to name you one at a time, and you can say yay or nay. So this would be voting to ratify the FY22 professional staff master agreement as in your packet. And just so you all know, it was the second document you received. There were some corrections or edits that were made to the first one. So it was the second one that you got like a day or two after the first. All right, Jack.
Positive.
Say that again.
I approve.
Thank you. Al.
Yes.
Yep.
Grant.
Yay.
Alicia.
Yay.
Peter.
I abstain to avoid the possibility of a conflict of interest.
Thank you. Nina.
Yay.
Joanna.
Yay.
Katie.
Susan?
I
Okay.
too abstain.
No,
Susan, you abstained?
no, I think Katie did. I say yay.
Katie, you abstained, is that what I heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Susan, you said yes, and I also say yes, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yays and 2 abstentions. So it's 6 yays and 6 yeses, 0 no's, and 2 abstentions is how that shakes out. Thank you very much. Did I do that math correctly?
No.
Yes.
6.
7
Yays.
yays, 7 yays, 2 abstentions, and
Okay.
7 and 2 is 9. So yeah, 9 votes, 10 people, 9 votes, sorry. And Mike Campbell has just listed, thank you, everyone. And I'm going to say to Mike Campbell, thank you, all teachers. And we look forward to doing this all again in just a few months. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. And you know, what's that? Jazz hands or something you're supposed to be able to do now to say yay? Okay, so next item on the agenda, we can go into executive session for without a finding, and I believe we should. So that would be the administrator salary. So we'll do that at the end of the meeting, and we'll move on to 8A warrants.
I move
And I
that
think Al's going to make his standing motion.
The authorization of approval indicates the authorization of our signature on all the things, so on and so forth.
Thanks, Al. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the warrants? All in favor of approving the warrants signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Superintendent report. Anything you'd like to add to your report?
Well, no, I was going to give a legislative update, but nothing can change in the next 2 weeks, and in the interest of time, this has been a relatively long meeting. I'll wait and give that next time.
Okay, thank you. Board announcements. Do any members of the board have any announcements to make?
I just quickly want to acknowledge that I think we're moving into probably one of the most complicated times that we've seen for COVID.
Somebody's got background noise. We need to mute, please. Sorry,
Susan.
Grant, to interrupt you, but I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I just want to recognize that I think we're moving into a very complicated time in terms of not necessarily policy, but you know, setting procedures and whatever else there is for COVID, and you know, just stress to the administration, teachers, whoever, that if the board can support, you know, let us know how we can support, whether that's just backing you up on policy or whatever the case may be, because I do think it's going to be challenging over the next few months to figure out exactly.
Thanks, Grant. Any other board announcements?
Can I just say I second what Grant said. Especially, it's important for us to be able to get all this information so that when we do have questions, we can support the administration with everything that we've been told tonight even.
Right. Thank you. Anyone else?
can I just ask a clarifying question? Nilda, do we also have to do ESP staff too?
Not tonight, but we
Oh,
will.
okay. All right, thank you.
I think that's coming up at perhaps the next meeting. Yeah. Okay, so hearing no other board announcements, items for future agenda, we have implicit bias training, recovery updates, 5-year plan, IT study, retreat dates and agenda. Anything else that came up? Well, we'll just
Do the policy on
the procedure.
procedures, yeah.
Yeah. Procedure on public complaint of personnel.
Yeah.
Okay, and anything else? I usually try to keep track of them as we go along, so I didn't hear anything new tonight. So we'll keep plugging away at these. So I think that we're ready to go in executive session. Is that correct? So I need the board and Kevin Dirth and Bill for executive session. Is that correct? Anybody else I need? Okay, so the rest of you, thank you very much for attending tonight's meeting. Mike, say thank you to the teachers for me. And when do you guys vote?
No, I know they're voting next week.
Okay.
First thing next week, their bylaws getting a little bit.
Okay, good. Thank you.
We
So
had to do it on Tuesday because of bylaws, sorry. And then we had to squeeze it in between parent teacher conferences and figure out Zoom stuff. So, but
Yeah.
anyway, Tuesday we'll have an answer.
So
which
you
will
know,
be-
tonight's information is public, so you know that, right? So I mean, we're not making any special announcement, but it is public information at this point for our side. Okay, thank you. And I need people to
Nilda.
get, yeah.
Are you gonna have a motion to go into executive session, please?
Just gonna do that, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, so Al, I'm counting on you to make these motions for me, and I totally missed the boat.
Mike, I didn't want to do it before you got finished with Mike.
Okay.
You know.
Hey, thanks, Al. So
I
Al makes
move
the
that we
motion.
go into Executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel and salaries.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, we're going to go into executive session and we can eliminate all the extras. Thank you. Okay, I would like a motion to approve the administrator's salaries as recommended by administration.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Thanks, Jack. There's a motion and a second. Any
Nilda?
discussion?
Nilda, can you
Yeah.
repeat, can you please repeat the motion? My internet went wonky right when you were talking. I'm sorry.
Okay, I requested a motion to approve the administrator salaries as recommended by administration,
Thank you.
or by the superintendent, I should say,
At 3%.
at 3%. So Al made that motion and Jack has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I appreciate that. I know that was painful for some people and I appreciate it and understand it. And, you know, as the year goes on, we're going to get better at this so that we can just get better at it. Is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Good job, Nilda.
at
Thank you. Good job.
Good night, everybody.
8:42, no less, 8:42.
Thank you, Nilda. I'll send this to Brenda.
Thank you so much.